It wasn't just a cartoon. It was therapy wrapped in terror. A pink dog trembling in nowhere, Kansas, saving lives he couldn't explain. An Oscar-nominated short that became a series nobody expected. And a librarian who became the voice of comfort in chaos. These are 20 strange, true, and unforgettable facts about Courage the Cowardly Dog, proof that truth in animation is always stranger than the nightmares on screen. Number 1. The story begins years before the series, in a 7-minute cartoon with almost no dialogue. The Chicken from Outer Space airs in 1996 as part of What a Cartoon, introducing an unnamed pink dog, an elderly couple, and a very angry alien chicken. Nobody in the short really speaks. Courage has a single line, delivered in a calm Borscht Belt-style voice by Howard Hoffman, very different from the screeching dog that followed. The short is nominated for an Academy Award for Best Animated Short, losing to Wallace and Gromit, A Close Shave. That loss quietly opens the door. What looks like a one-off indie horror gag becomes the test run for a show that outlives almost every other What a Cartoon experiment. The nomination gives Cartoon Network proof that this strange, wordless story about terror on a farm can travel beyond niche animation blocks into legitimate industry recognition. Number 2. The series is not sold in a normal pitch meeting. In one interview, Dilworth recalls arriving to pitch his storyboard for The Chicken from Outer Space in full spaceman gear, metallic jumpsuit, homemade helmet with a propeller, juggling in front of a room of executives. By the time the performance ends, the concept of a horror comedy starring a shaking pink dog is no longer abstract. It is a spectacle. The Oscar nomination for the short gives the executives proof that this spectacle can travel. The show about a cowardly dog is born from a creator with no fear of looking ridiculous in a room full of buyers. Dilworth later describes his approach as instinctive, driven by a belief that animation should be strange, unsettling, and beautiful all at once. The spaceman suit becomes legend, repeated in interviews and retrospectives for 2 decades. Number 3. Courage was never meant to be this quiet. In the pilot short, Courage doesn't speak at all. In early season 1 episodes of the series, he talks frequently, explaining plots, arguing with his own fear, delivering full sentences. In a later interview, Dilworth explains that Cartoon Network executives push for less dialogue, suggesting the character rely more on screams, babbling, and physical comedy. The team gradually scales back his lines, letting Marty Grabstein's yelps, gasps, and nervous mutters carry the performance. The supposed coward becomes one of television's most expressive heroes, using almost everything except words. By the final season, Courage speaks only when absolutely necessary. The silence becomes his signature. What began as a network note transforms into a defining creative choice, proof that terror needs no translation. Number 4. Behind Courage's gentle owner lies at least one real person. In a long-form conversation, Dilworth casually mentions that there is a real Muriel in Scotland, a woman who partly inspires the character, blended with traits from a personal friend. The show's version turns that influence into a warm, patient woman knitting through the apocalypse, unfazed by monsters circling her home. She cooks, she hums, she protects Courage without ever raising her voice. The most comforting figure in the series is rooted in reality, proving that the safest place in nowhere comes from one person's memory. Muriel becomes the emotional anchor, the reason Courage keeps fighting, even when every instinct screams for him to run. Her kindness is not naive, it is deliberate, and it is borrowed from someone Dilworth once knew. Number 5. Muriel's voice does not come from a cartoon veteran, but from a retired librarian. Thea White studies acting, works on stage, and even serves as a personal assistant to film legend Marlene Dietrich, then leaves show business to become a librarian and outreach specialist at a public library in New Jersey. Years later, she is invited back to perform Muriel Baga, staying with the role through all 4 seasons, a 2014 special, and the 2021 Scooby-Doo crossover. Her performance is gentle, warm, and unhurried. A grandmother's voice that feels like home even when the screen fills with nightmare imagery. A woman who spends decades guarding real-world stories becomes the voice of the grandmother who anchors one of animation's strangest ones. White passes away in 2021, shortly after recording her final Muriel performance. Her legacy lives in every rerun. Number 6. The grumpiest farmer on television is secretly two different men. For the first 33 episodes, Eustace Baggett is voiced by Lionel Wilson, a veteran actor in his 70s. Wilson retires from the role around 2001 due to illness, and Eustace is recast with Arthur Anderson beginning with the Season 3 episode So in Louvre Are We Too? Production continues to reuse Wilson's earlier grunts and catchphrases in later episodes, blending the two performances into one cranky character. Behind the stupid dog mask, Eustace is literally stitched together from two different voices, both still echoing in reruns long after the actors' deaths. Wilson passes away in 2003. Anderson follows in 2016. Yet Eustace remains, a composite character built from two men who never met, unified only by their shared ability to sound perpetually annoyed with everything around them. Number 7. Courage's world doesn't obey a single visual style. Reviewers note that the series often composites hand-drawn characters over real photographs and drops occasional CGI elements, giving the show a weird and ethereal look that feels half dream, half documentary. Dilworth later explains he is drawn to mixed media and takes it as a personal challenge to integrate different techniques, CGI models, photo textures, traditional cells, without breaking the illusion. That uneasy feeling in Nowhere comes not just from the monsters, but from the fact that the world itself looks like it was collaged together from different realities. Some episodes use painted backgrounds, others use scanned photographs of actual deserts, skies, and roads. The farmhouse itself shifts between hand-drawn and photorealistic depending on the scene. The result is a visual language that refuses to settle, keeping audiences off balance from the first frame to the last. Number 8. One of the show's scariest episodes hinges on a joke song the crew tries to make as awful as possible. In King Ramses' Curse, the second plague arrives as a record player that blasts a looping disco track, The Man in Gauze, while the family screams in pain. Composer Jody Gray later calls it a musical joke, saying that when they try to imagine something so terrible that Eustace and Muriel would writhe in agony, they come up with really bad disco. The lyrics and vocals are recorded by Gray and co-composer Andy Ezrin themselves. The cursed record meant to torture cartoon characters becomes a cult earworm, still looped and remixed online decades later. The track is now inseparable from the episode's haunting CG animation of King Ramses himself, creating a moment of surreal horror that feels more like experimental film than Saturday morning television. Number 9. Behind the scares, the music is built like an old Warner Brothers cartoon. The series' original score is composed primarily by Jody Gray and Andy Ezrin, who pack the soundtrack with wild stylistic jumps, horror stings, jazz, parody disco, and orchestral swells. They also weave in classical pieces like Wagner's Ride of the Valkyries, consciously paying homage to Carl Stalling's music for vintage Warner Brothers shorts. Some episodes reportedly use up to 15 distinct musical cues. Every Nightmare in Nowhere rides on the same musical DNA that powered Bugs Bunny, turning high art into fuel for a pink dog's panic. The score shifts constantly, from slapstick comedy to genuine dread, sometimes within the same scene. It is a technique borrowed from Golden Age animation, applied to stories about abuse, grief, and existential terror. Number 10. Stock screams aren't good enough. Dilworth insists on avoiding pre-made sound libraries wherever possible, working with sound designer Michael Geisler to build a custom set of effects from scratch. Their only rule: if a sound doesn't make them laugh, it doesn't survive to the final mix. The result is a sonic world where even the door creaks feel unique, giving each scare the texture of a handmade horror film. Every thud, gasp, squeak, and crash is recorded specifically for the show. Nothing is borrowed from stock audio banks. This approach requires more time and more budget, but it ensures that Courage sounds like nothing else on television. The show's audio becomes as distinctive as its visuals, a signature element that fans recognize instantly even without seeing the screen. Number 11. One Courage story pushes right up against the limits of children's television. Season 4's The Mask follows Kitty and Bunny, Two women caught in a violent relationship with an abusive gangster dog named Mad Dog. Dilworth later says he could not believe Cartoon Network allowed this episode to be aired, given its explicit themes of domestic violence, control, and coded LGBTQ+ subtext. Internationally, the episode is reportedly censored or pulled in some regions, including France. What begins as an experimental story about abuse and identity becomes the show's most infamous banned episode, analyzed years later as a landmark in kids' horror storytelling. The episode doesn't shy away from its subject matter. It depicts Bunny being beaten, Kitty forced to assist, and the eventual escape that cost them both dearly. It is one of the darkest narratives ever broadcast in a children's time slot. Number 12. The villains aren't overplanned, they are drawn in bursts. Asked how characters like Cats and LeQuack are designed, Dilworth describes simply sitting down and drawing whatever forms come out, fueled by production stress and instinct. He calls his natural instinct to deform, summing up the show's visual philosophy in 3 words. Weird is beautiful. Those rushed lightning strike sketches become some of Cartoon Network's most memorable monsters, each a snapshot of a director trying to beat a deadline. Cats is a tall, red, spider-limbed cat with dead eyes and a slow voice. LeQuack is a French duck con artist with a beak too large for his face. Neither looks like a typical cartoon villain. Both feel like they crawled out of a fever dream, sketched in minutes and animated with precision. The speed of their creation becomes their strength. Number 13. Many episodes are secretly case studies in adult pain. In a 20th anniversary reflection, commentators point to Last of the Star Makers and The Tower of Dr. Zalost as stories about sacrifice, grief, and depression, dressed up as alien cephalopods and cannon-firing towers. Dilworth himself lists themes he wants to tackle: slavery as an industry, domestic violence, animal cruelty, and personal freedoms, subjects rarely allowed in cartoons aimed at children. Beneath the slapstick, the show quietly trains a generation to recognize real-world cruelty through a terrified dog's eyes. The Tower of Dr. Zalost depicts clinical depression as a gray man firing sadness cannonballs at a town until Muriel offers him kindness. Last of the Star Makers shows a dying alien who sacrifices himself to create stars. These are not metaphors, they are direct emotional statements, wrapped in surreal imagery. Number 14. Behind the Cartoon Network branding is an independent filmmaker with a very specific agenda. Dilworth found stretch films in the early 90s and directs every episode of the series, giving Courage an unusually unified author's voice compared with many TV cartoons. Later profiles describe him treating the show like an indie film running inside a children's block, using surrealism, experimental cuts, and mixed media to push the format as far as possible. What airs as a 22-minute kids comedy is, behind the scenes, a 4-season independent film project masquerading as a cartoon. Stretch Films operates out of New York, far from the California animation hubs. This distance gives the show creative freedom, but it also isolates the production from mainstream cartoon conventions. The result is a series that feels like nothing else on the network because it literally comes from somewhere else. Number 15. The network has never seen numbers like this for an original. When Courage the Cowardly Dog officially premieres on November 12, 1999, Time Warner's own materials boast that it is the best series premiere in Cartoon Network history. Custom on-air promos and theater previews position the show as the next big brand, pairing horror imagery with comedy tags and the now iconic title sequence. The little pink dog from an oddball short becomes a flagship symbol in the network's shift toward original creator-driven series. The premiere is supported by a multimedia marketing push. Trailers air during primetime blocks. Print ads run in TV Guide. The farmhouse, the dog, and the screams become instantly recognizable. Within weeks, Courage is one of the most watched shows on the network. It holds that status for 4 years. Number 16. The series finale is a manifesto in disguise. The final episode, Perfect, follows a harsh teacher who torments Courage for his mistakes, pushing him towards some imagined ideal. When asked years later if this is a satisfying ending, Dilworth says yes, explaining that the episode reflects his feelings after making 104 cartoons. None of them are perfect, but the work still matters. The episode even revisits the moment Muriel rescues Courage, turning the show's origin into a gentle rebuke to perfectionism. The last lesson of a horror comedy series is that flaws, on screen and in life, are not curses, but proof that something real was attempted. Perfect doesn't offer closure. It offers permission to fail, to try again, to keep creating even when the work falls short. It is Dilworth's final statement on the entire series. Number 17. Years after cancellation, Courage quietly returns, but almost nobody in the US sees it on TV. Around 2012-2013, Cartoon Network and Stretch Films produced The Fog of Courage, a 7-minute CGI special intended as a pilot for a full CGI revival. The short airs on Cartoon Network Southeast Asia on Halloween 2014 and in a few other regions, while in the US it surfaces primarily through online uploads and convention screenings. Like one of Nowhere's Ghosts, the revival arrives on certain TV screens, leaves only traces elsewhere, and turns into a piece of modern, lost media lore. Fans debate its quality. Some appreciate the updated animation. Others feel the CGI loses the hand-drawn charm of the original. Either way, the special exists in a strange limbo. Officially produced, barely broadcast, widely circulated online. Number 18. At one point, there is almost a full Courage prequel series. In 2018, Dilworth mentions that he is in talks with Boomerang to develop a prequel titled Before Courage, exploring the Bogeye household before the events of the original show. By 2021-2022, he explains that the project has transformed into another thing, then later that it has been dropped entirely as management shifts focus to other properties. The only true origin story Courage never gets is his own, leaving the character's early years as fragmented as his nightmares. Fans speculate about what the prequel would have shown. How did Eustace and Muriel meet? Where did Courage come from? Why does the farmhouse sit in the middle of nowhere? None of these questions are answered. The prequel remains a ghost project, discussed but never realized. Number 19. When Courage finally meets Scooby-Doo, something, or someone, is missing. In 2021, Warner Bros. Releases Straight Outta Nowhere, Scooby-Doo Meets Courage the Cowardly Dog, an 80-minute direct-to-video film that brings Mystery Inc. to Nowhere, Kansas. Marty Grabstein and Thea White reprise Courage and Muriel, but Eustace is now voiced by Jeff Bergman, as both previous Eustace actors have passed away. Series creator John R. Dilworth publicly confirms he has no involvement with the crossover, making it the first official Courage project created without him. The film becomes both a final curtain call for Thea White and a rare glimpse of Courage in a world built by someone other than his original director. Fans receive it warmly, but note that something feels different. The visual style, the pacing, the tone, all slightly off. It is Courage, but not quite. Number 20. Even after the show ends in 2002, its footprint keeps growing. Fans push for revivals, organize a 2016 Facebook campaign for a 5th season, and trade high-definition upscales and lost media searches for specials like The Fog of Courage. Critical retrospectives rank Courage among the top Cartoon Network series and even the top 1990s cartoons overall, highlighting episodes like Courage in the Big Stinkin' City for their enduring power. What starts as a one-off short becomes a permanent fixture in nostalgia lists, horror essays, and meme culture, a show that keeps returning from cancellation like one of its own ghosts. In 2023, IGN names it one of the best cartoons of all time. Articles dissect its themes, its animation, its sound design. YouTube channels devote hours to retrospectives. The show that couldn't get a 5th season becomes immortal anyway. If you enjoyed the story I handpicked this next story that you will enjoy, please don't miss this one. Click here to watch it.